Time to check out our media partners from thevoiceofoc.org for an update on what's happening this week in Orange County government and politics.
Here to talk about the issues in the news right now, we welcome the editor-in-chief for Voice of OC, Norberto Santana. Glad to have you back with us, Norberto.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Okay, now, while there's been a great deal of debate recently about recovering $160,000 in rescue costs from two Costa Mesa teens who were lost in that South Orange County wilderness back in April, looks like local officials might have saved taxpayers real bucks thanks to a techie named John Sindri. What's going on?
Indeed. The debate until now is largely centered on whether the two teens who apparently were experimenting with drugs and got lost in the Trabuco wilderness should pay for the rescue effort that eventually found them. The high cost mainly revolves around the use of several helicopters from agencies like the Sheriff's Department and the Orange County Fire Authority. Yet Sendry, a 42-year-old programmer from Costa Mesa who joined the search for Kindle Jack more than 2 days after it began, used a much less expensive method. Free downloadable geo-tracking apps and iPad, which effectively allowed him to track volunteer search efforts and look for patterns in terms of holes. Ultimately, Sendry believes that he found Jack before anybody else, a contention that the Sheriff's Department says is possible. What we know for sure is that he ultimately led rescuers to her shouts for help. The Costa Mesa City Council recognized Sendry for doing what citizens do best in our country, get involved. And his innovative volunteerism, Mayor Jim Righeimer said, not only saved a life, but set an example of what civilians can do. Let's hear him here.
Can John Sendry please come up to the podium, John? With Kendall Jack still missing, John headed out by himself the next morning in the dark to find the missing Costa Mason. At 8:15, he heard Kendall, who was lapsing in and out of consciousness, but couldn't see her. After 3 tense hours, he was able to locate Kendall, and she was rescued by helicopter. The bottom line is, John Sendry decided to get involved. He had a plan. He executed it perfectly using technology. In the process, he most likely saved the life of Kendall Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Sendry and other rescue volunteers are working to establish a civilian rescue network that can effectively help authorities during these types of situations. We'll keep you updated on how those efforts mature.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I love that. All right, now speaking of tax dollars, let's turn back the efforts of Orange County supervisors who are now starting to pay for their own pensions. Norberto?
Earlier this month, supervisors approved a process where the few supervisors who do take a pension, which is John Morlock, Todd Spitzer, and Janet Wynn, would start paying into it. But get this, at the urging of Morlock, they've come up with a plan to be able to get a tax deduction for paying into their pensions. Unlike regular workers, county supervisors, who in Orange County are very critical of public pensions, have never paid into that benefit.
Okay, now that's an issue that'll likely come into play for Morlock, because I understand now he's announced he's going to be running for a soon vacant seat held by John Campbell.
Absolutely. Despite making his name on pension reform, Morlock, who came up with the tax deduction plan, has the most lucrative pension plan amongst the supervisors and has largely avoided efforts to pay into it in recent years. Supervisor Todd Spitzer is now questioning the legality of taking a tax deduction for pension payments, an issue that some, like Supervisors Chairman Sean Nelson, disputes.
All right, when it comes to heat, however, let's move on to the battle over Orange County's beaches and the fire pits. What's cooking on that front?
This is a great one. Officials from Orange County government and cities across have adopted a host of resolutions opposing the AQMD effort to remove fire wings at local beaches. They've labeled it as an inside job to get working class people away from high-end communities like Newport Beach. The final hearing on this issue is this week, but it's still unclear really where the effort came from. Now, we at Voice of OC tried to flesh that out by making a public records request for the email traffic amongst staffers that are working on the new regulation to remove the fire pits. This week, after months of stalling, we were told that the agency doesn't feel that staffers' emails are covered by the state's Public Records Act. Now, our legal partners, the wonderful pro bono attorneys and First Amendment experts at Cal Aware, tell us that the Public Records Act is clear. Emails are a public record. So we'll see how this one plays out.
I tell you now, despite, and we talk about, you talk about your legal people and all, and I'm talking about the Army attorneys now that we pay for as taxpayers at these public agencies. It's kind of interesting how they often interpret laws that govern the public right to know against public access.
Absolutely. And if you want a great example of this, of how these public agencies often misinterpret the state's Public Records Act, just look to the Orange County Board of Supervisors and the $1 million payout that they now have to pay the Sierra Club. Since 2007, Sierra Club volunteers from LA chapters wanted to get a copy of GIS parcel maps from the county, which refused, arguing that it was complex software and that it was exempt from the state's Public Records Act. While that argument worked for them in Orange County Superior Court as well as the appellate level, the state's Supreme Court this week rejected it handily, giving them a 7-0 decision to the environmental group, and likely a $1 million legal tab, since whenever the government loses a public records case, they owe the attorney fees. So while it took 6 years, chalk up another win for the citizens. And don't forget that you can now get these parcel maps for the simple cost of producing a CD, which is about $5 at the Orange County Clerk's office.
Oh, wow. Okay, good stuff. All right, thank you so much, Norberto, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay, for more on these stories and other political news throughout Orange County, go to voiceofoc.org.